Beneath the desert sky, where the horizon shimmers with heat by day and cools into a silver veil by night, the Great Pyramid rises like a prayer turned to stone. For thousands of years it has stood there unwavering, its angles carved against the stars, its weight pressing down into the earth like the very heartbeat of time itself. Travelers come and go, the sand shifts endlessly at its feet, but the pyramid does not move, does not change. It waits. It is said that within its walls, within the miles of stone pressed and stacked with impossible care, there lies a silence unlike any other on earth. It is not the silence of an empty room. It is not the silence of a night without wind. It is a silence that seems alive, a silence that breathes, a silence sealed away for thousands of years as if meant not for the ears of the living, but for the echoes of eternity. We begin here, at the edge of the desert with the pyramid before us, glowing faintly beneath the moonlight. The sands are cool underfoot, the stars hang like lanterns above, and as we approach, the vastness of stone becomes overwhelming, as if the sky itself has leaned down to touch the earth. You feel very small here. You feel very mortal, as though you are about to step into the lungs of something greater than a man, greater than a king. There are chambers inside this monument, some known, some suspected, some perhaps imagined. Chambers sealed so tightly that even the desert winds cannot find their way in. Places without light, where no flame has flickered for 4,000 years. The air within, if there is air, has not been touched since the day the builders placed the final stone. Imagine such air. Heavy, unbroken, older than empires. Each breath held within those walls is a fragment of a time when the world itself was young. It is said the builders may have intended these hidden rooms not for the living, but for the gods, or perhaps for no one at all. They stand there, silent and waiting, not holding treasure, not holding words, not holding bones, only holding emptiness. And yet, what an emptiness it is. The corridors that lead toward these places are narrow, sharp-edged, angled like shafts of light. They close in around you. They seem to hum faintly with the pressure of the stones, as if the pyramid itself is whispering through its weight. Some corridors go on, some end abruptly like thoughts unfinished. Perhaps they were meant to guide. Perhaps they were meant to mislead. Perhaps they were meant simply to exist in quiet defiance of understanding. And within these pathways, at certain thresholds, one feels the weight of ritual, though no ritual is written. The stones themselves seem to remember. One can almost hear the echo of chants that have long since faded, the footfalls of men carrying torches, the murmured prayers of architects who raised this mountain of stone into the sky. What purpose could such hidden chambers hold? Why would a monument so vast, so enduring, guard spaces so small, so still? Some believe they were resonance chambers, places where sound could gather, where the voices of priests or the breath of the pharaoh himself could strike the stone and live on as vibration. The pyramid, then, would not only be a tomb but an instrument, a harp of stone strung not with strings but with silence itself. Others whispered that the chambers were not meant to be entered at all, that they are offerings in themselves, pockets of emptiness gifted to the divine, carved from labor and stone to honor that which has no shape, no face, no form, a temple of nothing, a shrine to the unknown. And there are those who say the chambers were mistakes, architectural necessities, voids left to balance the impossible weight above. Yet even in this explanation the mystery lingers, for how strange it is that in a monument built to defy death even absence becomes sacred. If you stand long enough within the pyramid, even in the corridors open to visitors, you begin to hear something unusual. At first it seems like silence, then perhaps a faint hum. The air presses differently against the ear. Some have said it is like being inside the chest of a giant, listening to the breath that never ceases, a slow eternal inhalation, a stone body that breathes not in wind but in weight and stillness. Perhaps those hidden chambers are the lungs of this being, spaces left to let the stone itself draw in breath. And perhaps this is why they remain untouched, unbroken, for to disturb them would be to still the breathing of the pyramid itself. There is a legend whispered among desert storytellers that when all is quiet, on certain nights one can place their hand against the stones and feel a pulse, faint but steady, as if the pyramid itself has never ceased to live. The desert knows this silence. At night, when the stars wheel across the sky and the sands glow with pale silver, the pyramid is less a building and more a shadow. The winds curl around it but do not enter. The jackals wander at its edge but do not cross. It stands as it has stood since the first dawn of its birth, immense, mute breathing. To walk away from it is to carry that silence with you. It lingers in the mind like a slow echo, impossible to shake. You begin to wonder if the pyramid does not guard secrets, but instead creates them. That in its depths there may be no hidden relic, no forgotten text, no treasure, but only emptiness so profound it becomes holy. Imagine, if you will, a chamber sealed since the time of the pharaohs. No one enters. No torch burns. Only stone, dust, and silence remain. Yet in that silence is everything. The memory of hands that built it, the breath of those who laid the blocks, the prayers spoken as each stone was set into place. The chamber remembers, though it cannot speak, and now, 4,000 years later, it still waits. Not broken open, not revealed. Waiting in silence, what is it waiting for? Perhaps nothing. Perhaps that is the answer. Perhaps its very waiting is the ritual. As the chapter closes, let us linger there, in the silence, in the breathing stone. Let us leave the chambers untouched, the air undisturbed, the walls unbroken, for in their secrecy lies their meaning. The Great Pyramid rises in the night, its edges sharp against the stars, its shadow stretching long across the sands. Within, the silence deepens, infinite and sacred. It is not for us to know, perhaps. It is not for us to open. The silent breath of stone continues, carrying itself across the ages, steady as the tide, quiet as the stars, waiting for no one, waiting for nothing. And perhaps that is the truest treasure it holds. Not gold, not words, not relics, but silence itself. A silence carried across 4,000 years. A silence that will outlast us all. Beneath the eternal desert sky, where the winds sweep endlessly across the dunes and the moon marks her pale path across the heavens, rises the Great Pyramid of Giza. It stands as it has always stood, vast and immovable, its edges carved against the firmament like the geometry of a forgotten prayer. For more than 4,000 years it has endured storms, wars, the weight of empires that rose and crumbled around it, and yet within its massive body, buried beneath layers of stone, rests something far quieter than conquest. High above the known chambers, higher than the resting place once thought to belong to a king, lies a secret. Not a secret written in glyphs, nor a secret spoken in song, but a secret of silence itself. A chamber without inscription, without offerings, without memory. It is not marked on the outer skin of the pyramid. No map points to it. No ancient scroll sings of it. It was not meant to be found. And yet it exists, suspended in darkness, waiting without voice. A hollow pocket cradled in eternity's stone embrace. It is said that the builders of the pyramid carved with such precision that every block had a place, every joint a meaning. But why then did they leave this chamber? Was it an accident of architecture, a gap left to relieve the weight above? Or was it an intentional void, a room made not for men but for gods, for spirits, for echoes that never fade? No inscription answers, no wall painting speaks. The chamber lies above the king's chamber, like a thought hovering unspoken above a word, a memory above memory, a silence above silence. Some believe it is a chamber of resonance, a place where stone itself can sing. They say the voices of priests chanting in the dark might have climbed upward, their tones striking the granite until the very room became an instrument, a hollow lyre strung with absence. In such spaces, even silence has weight. Even emptiness has a voice. Others whisper that it was never meant for human feet to enter, that the builders carved it as an offering to the divine, not a vessel to hold objects or bones, but a vessel to hold nothing, to give back to eternity the only gift it does not already possess, emptiness itself. And still others suggest that it was pure necessity, an architectural solution to balance the crushing gravity of millions of tons of stone. Yet even here the mystery lingers, for how strange that in a monument raised to defy death, the void itself becomes sacred. Let us wander in imagination into that nameless chamber. There are no lamps here, no torches, only stone upon stone layered into a vast ceiling pressing downward while the floor remains bare, untouched. The air has not stirred since the time of its sealing. It is heavy, ancient, untouched by breath. If one could enter, one would feel the weight of silence pressing as strongly as the weight of stone. There are no images, no carvings, no altars. Yet the absence speaks. It tells us that perhaps some rooms are not made to contain treasures, but to guard the idea of secrecy itself. A space not for the living, not even for the dead, but for silence alone. Whispers tell us that emptiness is not nothingness but potential, that within a chamber without name lies a thought too vast to be spoken, too fragile to be carved, a thought that survives only in the hush between heartbeats. Perhaps that was the builder's true intention, to leave within the pyramid one room untouched by human presence, a reminder that not all mysteries must be revealed. Imagine the priests of the Old Kingdom, draped in linen, voices low as they carried offerings into the known halls. They placed incense before statues. They poured wine into bowls of alabaster. Yet none of them walked the passage leading upward into this forgotten void. None of them prayed here. This room remained apart, unseen even by the holy, a chamber unblessed, unspoken, and so it endures, neither sacred nor profane, but something older, something quieter. Travelers through the ages, from Greeks to Romans, from scholars to wanderers, never knew it existed. They walked below it, torches flickering, eyes wide with awe at the vast stones of the king's chamber, while above their heads the silent chamber rested, unnoticed. For centuries it slept. Not written, not remembered, not discovered. A space hidden not by design of guardians, but by the patience of silence itself. To stand in thought before it is to feel something profound. One realizes how often meaning is placed upon presence. Statues, inscriptions, artifacts, bones. But here meaning is carried by absence. It is a reminder that some truths are not carved in words or painted in colors. Some truths are written only in the hush of a room where nothing stirs. Perhaps the nameless chamber is not unfinished, but complete. Complete in its emptiness. Perfect in its silence. There are those who dream that the chamber hums faintly in the night, that when the winds shift over the pyramid's edges, the stones themselves vibrate, and this hidden room resounds like a secret bell, not a sound the human ear can hear, but a resonance that the spirit feels, deep, oceanic, star-marked. If that is true, then the chamber is alive still. Not with objects, not with relics, but with soundless song, the music of stone, the hymn of silence. In the end, the chamber without a name reminds us of the humility of not knowing, of walking into a story that refuses to finish itself. For thousands of years it has waited, not calling, not speaking, simply resting in its own stillness. Perhaps it was never meant to be found. Perhaps its purpose is to remind us that not every mystery has an answer, that some questions are meant to open into greater questions, that some doors remain closed, not because they are locked, but because they are sacred in their silence. As the moon drifts higher above the desert, silvering the stones of the pyramid, the chamber above the king's chamber continues to rest. It is not empty, not truly. It is full of memory, full of breathless time, full of the echo of everything we cannot know. It waits without inscription. It waits without offering. It waits without name, and so we leave it there, untouched, suspended in eternity. A room not built to hold treasure, but to hold the weight of secrecy itself. A silence that lingers like a prayer never spoken. A silence that endures like the stars above. A silence that carries us, softly, into the realm of dreams. Under the silver gaze of the moon, the desert lies still. The dunes curve like waves of a silent ocean, frozen in motion, their crests shimmering faintly beneath the stars. And there, rising from the sea of sand, the Great Pyramid stands. Its edges are sharp against the night sky, its weight older than empires, its body veiled in shadows as if it were not stone at all, but an ancient guardian made of silence itself. From afar it seems unbroken, a perfect geometry unmoving. Yet whispers tell us that within its heart lies a labyrinth of passages, narrow veins hidden beneath its skin, corridors that bend and halt, doorways that open into nothing, thresholds that lead only into walls of stone. It is as if the pyramid was built not to be entered but to be dreamed, and so in imagination we descend. It is said that within the pyramid the air grows heavy. The deeper one walks, the more the world above seems to vanish. The sands, the stars, even the moon itself, all are forgotten. Only the stone remains. Stones stacked in vast silence, pressing from every side. The passages are narrow, carved in straight lines, yet they feel alive, as though they are guiding you toward something unseen, or perhaps guiding you away. Torchlight flickers along the walls, and shadows leap like spirits caught in the stone's breath. You follow the path, and it narrows still. Each step seems to echo louder than the last until your own heartbeat feels like a drum in the hush. Then suddenly the passage ends. A wall of unyielding stone blocks the way, a doorway without a door, a path without a destination. Why would architects craft such places? Why create corridors that vanish into nothing? Some believe these passages were guardians, safeguards for the soul of the king, ensuring that no intruder might ever find his resting place. They say the pyramid was woven with illusions like a great stone maze, built not for the living but for confusion. Those who entered seeking treasure would lose themselves in false doors, in corridors that ended abruptly, in spaces that swallowed time. Others whisper that these were no mistakes of design, but deliberate gestures of ritual. That each blocked passage was itself a prayer in stone, a statement that not all paths are meant to be walked, not all gates are meant to open. The pyramid then becomes a mirror of existence itself, full of journeys that halt, questions without answers, thresholds we cannot cross. And still others say that perhaps the architects were not building for us at all. Perhaps these corridors with their strange endings were not meant to guide men, but to guide stars or spirits or something beyond the grasp of earthly feet. Perhaps the pyramid was less a tomb and more a map, a celestial chart carved in chambers and corridors, pointing not to places of earth but to realms unseen. As you wander deeper, the air grows colder, the silence thicker. Every turn feels the same. The walls are blank, offering no clue, no comfort, only the endless face of stone. At times the passages narrow so tightly that one must stoop, pressing forward with breath shallow, the weight of the pyramid pressing upon the back. The torchlight falters, and in the dark imagination awakens. The stones seem to whisper. You hear not words but echoes, as if the pyramid is breathing, as if the corridors themselves are lungs exhaling slowly across centuries. And when you reach another end, another wall, another sealed doorway, you realize that perhaps the passages were never meant to lead anywhere, that their very purpose is to remind us of endings, of limits, of questions left unanswered. Life itself is full of such sealed doors. We walk paths believing they will open, that they will reveal some hidden chamber of truth. Yet often the way halts, a wall stands before us, silence answers, and we are left to wonder why. The pyramid embodies this mystery in stone. Each blocked corridor becomes a reflection of our own journeys. Each sealed threshold, a reminder that not every step carries us forward, not every question yields a reply. Some paths exist simply to lead us into silence. It is said that within these hidden passages the echoes of time remain, that if one were to sit in stillness, torch extinguished, heart quieted, one might hear not one's own breath but the breath of the ages, the murmur of stones laid by forgotten hands, the faint pulse of the desert outside, the sound of eternity holding itself in suspension. Perhaps this is the veil of the hidden passage, not a veil that conceals, but a veil that teaches. It tells us that mystery is not always something to be solved, but something to be honored, that in the hush of a blocked corridor, in the shadow of a sealed door, there lies a sacred lesson. That absence too has meaning. The labyrinth of the pyramid is a labyrinth of the soul. Its dead ends are mirrors of the questions that circle within us, questions that do not resolve, that simply rest in silence. And maybe that is enough. Beneath the desert moon, the pyramid glows faintly, its skin shimmering with pale silver. Travelers stand outside, gazing upward, never knowing the twists and turns that lie beneath, never imagining the passages that lead only to silence. Yet within, the echoes remain sealed beneath stone, holding their breath across millennia. The pyramid is more than a tomb. It is a reminder that not all journeys are meant to be completed, that some paths are sacred precisely because they end in stillness. Perhaps the architects knew this. Perhaps they carved their silence into the very heart of the monument, leaving us corridors that do not speak so that we might learn to listen. And so, as we leave the hidden passages behind, we carry with us their echo, the sound of steps that end in darkness, the whisper of stone that guards its secrets, the hush of thresholds that do not open. Perhaps these corridors were never meant to be found. Perhaps their only purpose was to remind us that some mysteries remain veiled, not because they are forgotten, but because they are sacred. Beneath the silence where memory fades, the pyramid breathes still, and the hidden passage, sealed forever, continues to wait, waiting not to reveal, not to answer, but simply to endure, like a prayer carved in stone meant not to be read, but to be felt. a veil drawn across the face of eternity, in the hush of night. When the desert lies like an ocean of silver sand, the pyramid rises in silence. Its shape is flawless, unbroken against the dark, a geometry older than kings, older than empires. Moonlight brushes its edges, softening the stone into a vast silhouette, as if the monument itself were drifting toward the heavens. It is said that within its heart, a chamber rests, a chamber carved with such intention, such precision, that it speaks not only to stone, but to stars. The king's chamber, some call it, but others call it by no name at all, for in its silence it carries meanings that words cannot hold. To enter, one must leave the night behind. The desert sky fades, and with it the glittering horizon of stars. One walks downward into shadowed corridors where the walls narrow, and the weight of the pyramid presses from every side. The sound of the world falls away. Steps echo, then vanish. Breath seems louder than thought. At last the passage opens. The chamber rises around you. Vast and solemn, its walls smooth and bare, its ceiling towering as though the builders sought to reach beyond themselves. Here stone is not decoration. It is silence itself, shaped into walls. And yet silence does not rule this place. For those who listen, a subtle hum begins to stir. A vibration, low and steady, as though the very air has become a string of some hidden instrument. It trembles against the body, faint at first, then stronger, until one cannot tell whether the sound is heard by the ears or felt within the bones. It is said that the chamber was built for resonance, that a single voice raised here does not belong to one alone. Words strike the walls and return, transformed, stretched, lingering in the air like a second unseen singer. To speak in this chamber is to share your breath with eternity. Some whisper that the chamber was aligned with purpose, that its narrow shafts, cut clean through the stone, point directly toward the stars. One toward Orion, the hunter whose belt has guided wanderers across the desert sands. Another toward Sirius, the bright one, star of rebirth whose rising once marked the flood of the Nile. Why then would a king rest here beneath stone and silence, his tomb pierced by pathways of starlight? Was it so that his spirit might follow these celestial rivers drawn upward like smoke toward the constellations? Was it a map for the soul guiding him home to the sky from which all kings believed they came? Others believe the chamber was never meant only for the dead. They say it is a place where earth and heaven meet, where sound and light intertwine. The hum of the chamber is not a flaw but an intention, a note carved into stone, tuned to the frequency of the universe itself. Imagine it now, a gathering of priests in linen robes, their feet bare upon the cold floor. Torches flicker faintly, smoke curling upward into the hollow dark. One begins to chant, low, steady, a sound like the breath of the earth itself. His voice deepens, filling the chamber, and then another joins and another until the walls begin to tremble with sound. The air becomes alive, each note lingering, rebounding, weaving itself into an unseen tapestry. It is no longer many voices, but one voice, vast, endless, echoing. Perhaps they believed the sound carried beyond the stone, that it climbed through the shafts, reaching the stars, a song rising upward into the night sky. Perhaps they believed that in this way, the human breath could touch the divine, that the voice of man could join the choir of the heavens. And perhaps, in that moment, the chamber became more than a room. It became an instrument. The pyramid itself became a harp, strung not with strings, but with air, with silence, with the resonance of eternity. It is said that if you lie upon the cold stone floor, the chamber speaks differently. The walls vanish. The darkness above becomes endless, and through the narrow channels of the air, the stars thread their light. A pinprick of Sirius, a beam toward Orion, the breath of the cosmos passing into the lungs of the earth. Here, in this stillness, one feels both infinitely small and infinitely vast. The stone above presses down like the weight of time, yet the stars pierce through, pulling the soul upward. Between them you lie suspended, half buried in earth, half reaching for heaven. Whispers tell us that this was the true meaning of the chamber, to bind the human body to the celestial body, to remind us that we are not only dust of the ground but also dust of stars. And yet, for all these whispers, no one can say for certain, was this chamber built for the king alone? Or was it built for the cosmos, a place where the living could touch eternity? Was it tomb or temple, silence or song? Perhaps it was all of these or none. For as with all things sacred, the answer lies not in certainty but in wonder. The chamber does not explain itself. It only offers its resonance, its silence, its shafts of starlight. It waits not to be solved but to be felt. In the stillness, imagine again the chant, the way it strikes the walls, the way it lingers, trembling, folding upon itself, the way it ceases and yet never fully disappears, as if the air itself remembers. Perhaps the chamber was not built to speak to the stars, but to remind us that sound, like life, never truly ends. It echoes, changes, carries on, weaving itself into the fabric of silence. Perhaps the pyramid was not only to guard the dead, but to teach the living that their breath, their voice, their song joins the eternal chorus. Beneath the silence, the pyramid hums still, and if you listen closely, with the stillness of a dreamer, you may hear it even now. The faint vibration, the breath of stars passing through stone. A song older than kings, older than empires. A song that does not belong to one voice but to all. The chamber remains. It waits in shadow as it has for thousands of years. Waiting not to be discovered but to be entered in silence. Waiting for the hum of breath, the resonance of a single note rising once more. Perhaps it was never meant to be explained. Perhaps it was always meant to be felt, in the way the body feels sound, in the way the heart feels wonder. For the pyramid, vast and unyielding, does not speak in words. It speaks in echoes. It speaks in silence. It speaks in light drawn from the stars and in the hum of the air itself. And so, the echoing room of stars continues, a chamber where stone and sky meet, where human breath and celestial fire intertwine, a place where silence becomes music, and music becomes prayer, a place where the pyramid does not guard only the dead, but sings softly to the living sky. There are nights when the desert seems to breathe. The wind moves across the sands in long sighs, carrying whispers older than language, older than memory. Beneath the moon, the pyramid stands immovable, yet never lifeless, a geometry of shadow and silver, its edges softened by time, its heart untouched by it. Among its millions of blocks, each one shaped and set by human hands, whispers speak of a stone unlike the rest. To the eye, it is ordinary, lost in the great sea of limestone, but some say it carries a secret. A cavity unseen, an inscription eroded, a silence deeper than stone itself. It waits not to be discovered but to be felt, a presence hidden in plain sight. It is said that every block remembers, that when the builders lifted it with ropes and chants, when sweat fell upon it beneath the burning sun, something lingered, the breath of those who carried it, the prayers of those who laid it, the silence of those who died shaping it. Stone, unlike flesh, does not forget. And so to walk around the pyramid is to walk through a library, not a library of scrolls, not of ink and parchment, but of weight and memory. Each block is a page, each page written in silence. Together they form a story too vast for any single voice to read. But this story, this endless book of stone, may have one page that holds more than the rest. A single block hidden among millions, carrying a secret deeper than memory. Ancient writings, faded with dust and time, speak in riddles of such a stone. Some say it bore a mark, a carving so faint it vanished under centuries of sandstorms. Others claim it was hollowed within, an empty vessel sealed so perfectly no hand could find its entrance. A hidden chamber within a stone, a paradox, a riddle wrapped in weight. Whispers tell us that this stone was not like the others. It was placed with intention, not as a building block but as a sentinel, a watcher, a keeper of silence. Imagine the hands that shaped it, the voices that chose it. Perhaps there was a ritual, a moment when its destiny was decided. A priest in linen standing under the desert sun, pointing to that stone and declaring it sacred. Perhaps the workers themselves, exhausted and blistered, felt a strangeness in its weight, a hum in its stillness, and knew it was not ordinary. And so, when it was raised into its place, chants may have filled the air, not for strength, not for endurance, but for memory, as though this stone, above all others, was meant to watch. Stone has always been more than stone. In every culture, in every land, it has been seen as eternal. The bones of the earth, the breath of mountains hardened and silent. Temples, altars, tombs, all are carved from stone, not because it is strong, but because it endures. To carve into stone is to speak to eternity. To build with stone is to write into time itself. And so, if one block of the pyramid carries a secret, it is not a secret of treasure or gold, but a secret of memory. For stone has eyes that never close, ears that never tire. It has felt the desert winds for 4,000 years, the rising of suns, the falling of moons. It has held the silence of nights when no human voice stirred, when only the stars leaned close to listen. It remembers, not as we remember with names and numbers, but in silence. The stone remembers by existing, by holding the weight of centuries within its unbroken frame. Some believe the stone carries not just memory, but resonance. That if one were to press against it, to lay one's hand upon its cool surface, the body would feel a pulse. Not of life, not of blood, but of time itself. A vibration as faint as the echo of a breath, lingering from the chance of those who set it into place. Others believe the stone is hollow, that within it rests an emptiness so pure it was meant as a vessel for the unseen, a space for spirit or for silence, or for the voice of gods. And some believe it is marked, that beneath erosion and dust lies a sign, perhaps a symbol of a star, or a spiral leading inward, or a word no tongue has spoken for thousands of years, a mark so faint that it survives only in whispers. If we close our eyes, we might imagine this stone. Imagine approaching it in the stillness of night when the desert is soft and the pyramid glows beneath the stars. It looks like all the others, pale, massive, unmoving, and yet something in it draws the gaze, a presence that cannot be explained. You place your hand upon it. The stone is cool, colder than the air. For a moment there is nothing. Only silence and then perhaps a vibration. Subtle, uncertain, as though the stone itself is breathing slowly, patiently with the rhythm of time. You lean closer. The silence deepens, becomes a sound beneath sound. The faint hum of memory, the pulse of 1,000 hands, the chant of forgotten voices. In that moment, you feel the stone watching. Not with eyes, not with intent, but with a silence so vast it knows more than you could ever ask. What secret, then, does this stone hold? Perhaps it is not a secret to be spoken, but a secret to be carried. A secret that exists not in words, but in silence. Perhaps it does not tell us anything. It simply reminds us that all things endure, not by clinging to their stories, but by holding them in stillness. The pyramid itself is not a book to be read. It is a silence to be entered. And this stone, the one that watches, is its guardian. Some voices say it guards the memory of a king, others that it guards the music of the stars, and some say it guards nothing at all, that its purpose is only to remind us that silence, too, is sacred. In the end, the stone remains what it has always been, unmoving, unread, unbroken. It does not explain itself. It does not ask to be found, it waits, as it has always waited, through centuries of winds, through the footsteps of countless travelers, through the rise and fall of empires. It waits not for answers, but for silence, for the moment when we are still enough to listen, for the moment when we can understand that absence is not emptiness, but presence. That silence is not nothing, but everything. The pyramid is a monument, yes, but it is also a library. Not of words, but of stones. Each block a page, each page inscribed not with ink, but with silence. And within this vast, unreadable book, one stone may carry more than the rest. It is not louder. It is not brighter. It simply waits. A page that cannot be turned, a word that cannot be spoken. Perhaps it was never meant to be found. Perhaps it was always meant to be felt. A reminder that the greatest secrets are not revealed in light, but held in silence. And so the stone watches as it has always watched. Through the dust of centuries, through the breath of stars, through the endless sigh of the desert night, it watches in silence. It remembers in silence. And in that silence, we too may find the presence of eternity. There are nights when the desert feels endless. The dunes ripple like waves upon a darkened sea, and the wind drifts through them like a ghost carrying whispers no one can claim. In the heart of this vast silence rises the Great Pyramid, a mountain of stone sharper than shadow, older than the memory of nations. By day it dazzles in the sun, a monument unyielding. By night under the stars it softens, becoming a dream, a vessel adrift in time. It was built, they say, for a king, a pharaoh whose name once thundered across the land, whose command raised armies, temples, and the very course of the Nile. A king who sought eternity, who reached for the heavens in stone. And yet when one enters the chamber at its heart, when one stands before the sarcophagus of red granite, what is found? Nothing. The stone box lies empty, cold as moonlight. No bones, no body, no trace of the one for whom it was carved. A tomb without its king. It is here that the silence deepens. For what is a tomb without its sleeper? What is a vessel without its breath? The sarcophagus waits, vast and hollow, like a mouth that has forgotten its voice. Some believe the pharaoh was never placed here, that the pyramid was never his resting place, but a monument to something greater. Perhaps his true tomb lies hidden still, buried beneath the sands, sealed away where no thief, no pilgrim, no seeker may find it. A secret burial ground known only to gods and stars. Others whisper that he was here once but vanished, stolen by time, by raiders, by the shifting tides of history. That his body was carried away, lost to the greed of centuries. And still others wonder if the pharaoh never needed to rest his flesh. That his body was never the point. That the pyramid itself became his body. Its corridors, his veins, its shafts, his breath. Its chambers, the organs of an eternal stone-bound being. It is said that immortality was not always about flesh. To the ancients, the soul was many-layered. A breath, a shadow, a name, a memory. One part could rise to the stars, another linger among the living. Another descend into the deep. The pyramid, then, may have been the vessel to hold these fragments. Picture it. The king ascending, his spirit carried through narrow shafts aligned with Orion and Sirius. His breath moving through the hidden corridors, echoing in chambers built to hum like instruments. His shadow resting in the sarcophagus, not as bone, but as presence. The pyramid itself breathing for him, stone taking the place of lungs. Whispers tell us that in this way the pharaoh still sleeps within. Not as bones, not as dust, but as vibration, as resonance, as silence that moves like air through ancient veins. The empty sarcophagus becomes a question. Was it failure or was it fulfillment? Did the pyramid lose its king, or did it succeed in dissolving him into eternity? Some archaeologists call it absence, others call it theft. But for those who stand in the chamber, in the hush so deep that every heartbeat feels too loud, the emptiness speaks in another way. It speaks as invitation. Perhaps this was never a tomb in the ordinary sense. Perhaps the emptiness is the point. For what is eternity if it is not vast, unfilled, impossible to hold? The sarcophagus, wide and waiting, may not be missing its king at all. It may be complete, filled not with bone, but with breath, with silence, with the unseen presence of all that lingers. Imagine now, you step into the chamber, torchlight flickering against the granite walls. You approach the sarcophagus. Its edges are sharp, its surface worn by centuries of touch. You lean over and within there is only darkness. And yet if you are still enough, you may sense something, the weight of absence. A heaviness that is not emptiness but presence beyond words. A silence that hums as though breath itself lingers in the stone. It is said that those who rest beside the sarcophagus feel a strange resonance, as though their own breath joins with something greater. A rhythm not their own, a pulse hidden in the air. Some leave unsettled, others leave changed. The pharaoh, it is said, sought to escape time, not to be remembered as flesh that withers, but as presence that endures. And perhaps this is what he achieved. Perhaps the pyramid itself is his dream, still unfolding across the desert. For stone does not die. It shifts, it erodes, but it endures. And so the king endures, not as a body, but as silence, not as a figure in flesh, but as the breath that moves through chambers. The alignment of stone with star. The endless hum of resonance in the king's chamber. Some voices say he sleeps still. That the pharaoh never left, but dissolved into the monument itself. His body became air, his breath became stone. His dream became the desert sky, and if so, then to stand within the pyramid is to stand inside his dream. Whispers tell us that the shafts of the king's chamber were not built as windows, but as pathways, narrow veins through which the pharaoh's essence could rise to the stars. Through them his breath would ascend, joining Orion, Sirius, the eternal rivers of light. And yet, what if those pathways worked in both directions? What if they did not only carry the pharaoh upward, but also carried the stars downward? The breath of heaven entering the pyramid, feeding the dream within. Perhaps this is why the sarcophagus lies empty, for the king is not gone. He is both within and beyond, both dust and starlight, both silence and breath. In forgotten corners of the earth there are tales of kings who never died. They only slept, waiting for the right moment to awaken. Perhaps the pharaoh is one of them. Not a corpse hidden in stone, but a dreamer still breathing, still waiting, still present in silence. And perhaps the pyramid is not a tomb, but a cradle, a vessel for dreaming, a monument not to death, but to the strange, endless half-sleep of eternity. The desert wind passes. The stars shift. The pyramid remains. Within, the sarcophagus lies still, vast and hollow. Perhaps it will never be filled. Perhaps it was never meant to be, for the breath of the pharaoh lingers not in bone, not in flesh, but in the silence of stone. It drifts through corridors, hums in chambers, moves through shafts marked by the moon. The pyramid is his body. The desert is his shadow. The stars are his name. And in this way, the pharaoh still sleeps, beneath the night sky, beneath the eternal silence of stone. The chamber closes around you. The torches fade. Only the hum of silence remains steady, eternal. Perhaps he is not gone. Perhaps he is only dreaming. And perhaps we too, in listening, have entered the dream, breathing the breath of the sleeping pharaoh, carried in silence across 4,000 years. In the hush of the desert night, where the dunes shimmer like waves of silver dust and the stars hang low as lanterns above the earth, there are whispers of places unseen. They tell of hidden rooms, of passages that sink below the pyramid's great weight, carved into the living bedrock, deeper than the eye dares to imagine. It begins as a thought, a shadow, an echo of a story told by wanderers, priests, seekers. They speak of doors sealed beneath the sand, of chambers that have never breathed the air of our world, where silence itself has become the guardian. Some say that beneath the stones of the pyramid lies another pyramid, invisible and inverted, a mirror image pointing into the earth instead of the heavens. And in its hollowed heart rests a chamber where no torch has burned, where time holds its breath. It is said that to reach it one must descend slowly, as if following a spiral into the earth's own memory. Steps cut into the stone, lanterns flickering against walls damp with ancient breath, the air colder, denser with each passing stride. The silence grows heavier the deeper one goes, pressing like invisible hands, until one feels not that they are moving downward, but inward, into the body of the earth itself. And there, in that imagined descent, a thought takes hold, that the ground beneath us is not inert, not lifeless, that it has veins, chambers, and a pulse, that the earth itself remembers. Whispers tell of sacred pools resting in the dark, their waters still as glass, reflecting not the stars above, but the stars long vanished, constellations as they appeared thousands of years ago. To gaze into such a pool, it is said, is to see not only the sky of the ancients, but the faces of those who once built these monuments, their reflections woven with your own. Other legends speak of relics sealed away, scrolls inked with the language of the gods, statues untouched by time, fragments of gold and alabaster hidden not for the dead, but for the unborn, as if waiting for eyes not yet opened to the world. And some tales, quieter still, tell of passages that lead beyond chambers and pools, into vast hollow caverns, sanctuaries where forgotten temples rest beneath layers of earth, guarded by silence, marked only by the heartbeat of stone. It is in these stories that the sense of reverence deepens. For to imagine such a chamber is to stand on the edge of a threshold, not one of stone, but one between worlds. Above, the desert stretches eternal, open and wide, a sea of light and wind. But below, the earth folds in upon itself, close and veiled, as though guarding secrets not meant for daylight. To cross such a threshold is not simply to explore. It is to trespass upon the border of two realities, the world of the living and the unseen world where memory lingers like incense in still air. In forgotten writings, there are hints of such places. Herodotus, the traveler of old, wrote of hidden passages beneath the pyramids, of labyrinths vast and unfathomable. Later chroniclers echoed his words, each retelling cloaking the legend in deeper mystery. Yet no hand has uncovered proof. No lantern has ever revealed the truth of those whispers. And perhaps that is the point. For whether such chambers exist or not, the imagining of them has become its own kind of reality. They live not in stone, but in the quiet chambers of the mind, in the collective dream of all who stand before the pyramid and wonder what lies beneath. The deeper one drifts into thought, the more the air changes. The silence in these imagined passages is not empty but full of the weight of centuries, of voices pressed into the earth like fossils of sound. If one were to listen with perfect stillness, one might hear it, a low hum, a vibration, as though the earth itself is breathing. Beneath the silence, there is pulse. Beneath the dust, there is memory, and within that memory, perhaps there is a door. Close your eyes and see it. A wall of stone, smoothed by ancient hands, carved with markings too faint to read. A faint seam along its edge, a doorway sealed with purpose. Beyond it, more silence. Beyond it, perhaps nothing, or perhaps everything. It is said such doors are not made to be opened by force. They are not locks to be broken, but mysteries to be contemplated. They open only when the spirit is ready to see, not when the hand is ready to grasp. And so they remain closed, waiting, as though time itself has no urgency. To dream of these chambers is to feel both wonder and unease. For what lies beneath may be sacred or it may be nothing at all, yet it is the not knowing that gives them their power. They exist in that fragile space between memory and imagination, between myth and dust. Standing above the sand, you may never touch these hidden places, yet in listening, in wondering, you have already descended. The lantern has flickered, the air has cooled. The silence has wrapped itself around you like a cloak. And in that silence, you stand at the threshold, a threshold not of stone, but of spirit. Perhaps there is indeed a chamber beneath the pyramid, vast and waiting. Perhaps it is filled with pools and relics, with echoes of forgotten chants. Or perhaps there is only rock, solid and mute, holding nothing but itself. Both in their own way are sacred, for the mystery itself is the relic. The silence itself is the treasure. The desert night lingers. The stars draw their slow arcs across the sky. The pyramid stands unmoving, its base rooted in the bedrock, its shadow reaching into eternity. Beneath it, beneath the sand, beneath the dust of countless centuries, there may lie a door that remains unseen, a door that remains closed. And so the story ends not with discovery, but with silence, not with an opening, but with a waiting. For perhaps it was never meant to be found. Perhaps some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. The chamber beneath the sand remains in legend, in dream, in silence. Forever closed, forever waiting. There are nights when the desert breathes differently, when the wind drifts low along the dunes and lifts a veil of dust into the silver air, carrying with it whispers not of kings, but of hands. Hands that once bore the weight of stone, hands that shaped eternity but were themselves forgotten. The pyramids stand as monuments to the dead. But who's dead? The name of a pharaoh glimmers in memory, inscribed in gold, carried through centuries as though time itself bowed to royalty. Yet in the cracks of those stones, beneath the shadow of walls so immense they eclipse the sky, lie other names. Names unspoken, names erased by silence. They belong to the builders. It is said the desert still carries their breath. In the dust that lingers at dawn, in the faint rust-colored marks left deep within the passageways, there lives the quiet echo of their presence. They are gone, yet their work is eternal, folded into each block, each seam, each perfect angle. Imagine it. The morning sun rising over the plateau, the air cool before the fire of the day. Rows of men and women, some strong, some weary, gathered to lift and pull. The desert trembles with the weight of stone sledges dragged across sand, water poured to ease the friction, ropes creaking with strain. Their voices rise not in rebellion, but in chant, a rhythm of labor, a music of survival. And as each stone is laid, a murmur of prayer escapes into the air. Some for the gods, some for the pharaoh, many for themselves, and for their families, their children, for rain, for bread. These prayers, never recorded in scrolls, became threads woven into the monument itself, absorbed by stone, carried across the centuries. Whispers tell us that in hidden chambers, faint graffiti remains, not the grand inscriptions of pharaohs, but humble signs. The names of work teams painted in ochre, the symbols of villages, the rough drawings of boats and birds. Marks left not for us, but for themselves. Proof, perhaps, that they too belong to this eternity. One mark reads, "The drunkards of Menkaure." Another, "The friends of Khufu." Humor carved into dust. Laughter preserved against the impossible weight of history. In these playful fragments, the builders speak more vividly than the pharaohs ever could. Their humanity lingers, fragile yet enduring, echoing like faint voices in the dark. It is tempting to think of them as nameless, faceless, mere shadows in the machinery of empire. Yet to walk in imagination among them is to feel their presence rise. You can almost see the sweat glistening on their brows, the cloth wrapped tightly around shoulders, the sandals worn thin by endless steps upon stone and sand. You can almost hear the breath of exhaustion, the grunt as a block shifts into place, the sigh of relief when the rope slackens at last. They were farmers in another season, called to labor when the Nile's flood receded. They were artisans who shaped the limestone smooth, carpenters who carved beams, women who prepared bread and beer to sustain the workforce. They were not slaves, but workers bound by duty, by reverence, and by the shared vision of raising something eternal. Their names do not live in temples. Their faces do not appear on statues. And yet their fingerprints are pressed invisibly into every stone. There is a certain humility in stone. It remembers quietly. It does not speak, but it holds. The dust that gathers between its cracks carries fragments of skin, of breath, of hair, the tiny remnants of the thousands who passed before. It is as though the pyramid itself has become a library, but instead of words it is written in dust. And in that dust there is pride, silent, uncelebrated pride. For though their names are lost, though their voices have faded, the builders became eternal by vanishing into their work. Their identity merged with the stones themselves. Each block is their testimony. Each seam, their signature. Consider this. When the desert wind rises and sweeps its long fingers across the plateau, lifting grains of sand into spirals of light, it is perhaps lifting the very breath of those forgotten workers. The dust you inhale as you stand before the pyramid may once have rested upon their skin. In this way, they are still with us, still present, not as shadows of memory, but as living dust carried upon the air. Perhaps the builders themselves knew this. Perhaps as they worked beneath the blazing sun, they whispered to one another that the pyramid was not only for the king, but for all of them. That it would outlast their bones, and their bones would return to the dust, and that dust would circle back into the pyramid, becoming one with its breath. Beneath the silence of centuries, the builders linger. They are not buried in chambers gilded with treasure. They do not rest beneath carved lids of sarcophagi, but nearby humble tombs have been uncovered, rows of workers laid to rest with jars of food, amulets for protection, and tokens of daily life. Even in death, they were close to the monument they raised. Close enough that the shadow of the pyramid touched their graves as the sun arced across the sky, as though the stone itself watched over them, acknowledging their unseen place in eternity's design. And so when we stand before the pyramid, it is not only the pharaoh we should see. It is the multitude behind him, thousands of lives folded into the fabric of this monument, each invisible yet essential. Some believe that monuments are only for rulers, but perhaps the pyramid itself is a contradiction. For though its name belongs to a single king, its body belongs to all who touched it. The king rests in absence. The builders rest in dust, yet it is their dust that still rises, their dust that still clings to the stones, their dust that drifts across the desert, veiling the horizon in soft gold. And so the story closes, not with the pharaoh who sought immortality, but with those who unknowingly achieved it. For while his body has vanished, their breath lingers in the dust. Perhaps the pyramid is not only a tomb, but a chorus and silent and visible, eternal, and of all who labored, all who sang, all who prayed beneath the desert sun. In the quiet of night, when the air grows still, one might hear it. Not the voice of a king, but the faint laughter of workers, the low murmur of chants, the rustle of sand carrying fragments of their breath. The pharaoh is a name. The builders are the dust, and dust endures. Perhaps it was never meant to be otherwise. Perhaps some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. And tonight, if you listen beneath the silence, the dust of forgotten builders will whisper still. In the desert's stillness, there comes a moment when the boundary between earth and sky dissolves. The sand glows pale beneath the moonlight, and the pyramid rises from its bedrock throne like a mountain of shadow turned to silver. It stands not merely as stone stacked upon stone, but as something older, something that seems less built than summoned. And as the stars kindle above, one feels that the monument is less a tomb of silence and more a gate, a threshold between what is seen and what is forever hidden. It is said that the ancient Egyptians did not think of death as an ending. They thought of it as a passage, a crossing of a sacred veil. In their eyes, the night sky was not emptiness but a great ocean, where stars were lanterns marking the way for the soul. To them, the pyramid was a vessel, a beacon, a stairway into that eternal night. Whispers tell us that the shafts of the king's chamber point not randomly, but with careful intention, one toward Orion, the celestial hunter, another toward Sirius, the brightest star that heralded the Nile's flood. Through these star-marked tunnels, the spirit of the pharaoh was said to ascend, carried not by wings but by light itself. Imagine it, the chamber, vast and hushed, lit only by a flickering flame. Priests move in silence, their chants low and steady, each syllable vibrating against the stone as though the walls themselves were listening. The sarcophagus rests at the heart of the chamber, empty now but alive with possibility. A torch is raised and smoke curls toward the shaft, toward the narrow slit of sky as if beckoning the stars themselves to enter. And above, beyond the stone, the heavens wheel slowly in silence. Orion's belt glitters, Sirius burns with steady brilliance, and the Milky Way unfurls like a river of light, the celestial Nile, echoing its earthly twin. The pharaoh's soul, it was believed, would rise upon this current, passing through the gate of eternal night, to dwell among the imperishable stars. Some believe the pyramid itself was built as a map, each corridor a symbol, each angle a reflection of the sky. To walk its narrow passages is to follow a star chart inscribed in stone, a cosmic riddle carved not for human eyes but for the gods. The air grows heavy as you descend, your steps echoing into silence, each corner leading deeper into the heart of mystery. And yet, when you stand within the king's chamber, the emptiness is overwhelming. No treasure, no paintings, no inscriptions. Only stone, smooth and immense as though words would have been too fragile for what the chamber meant to hold. It is a silence that hums, not empty but resonant as if awaiting the breath of eternity. Perhaps it was never meant to hold a body. Perhaps it was always meant to hold a passage. In forgotten corners of the earth, there are myths of gates that lead to other realms, caves that echo with voices not your own, rivers that vanish into the underworld, mountains that pierce the veil between heaven and earth. The pyramid belongs to this lineage of thresholds. It is not simply a tomb but a portal. The ancient texts call the pharaoh a star. His soul, they believed, would become one of the imperishable lights that never set. To die was to ascend, to trade the dust of the desert for the brilliance of the cosmos. And so the pyramid was raised as his stairway. Each block a step, each angle a guiding line, each shaft a narrow breath of light to show the way. Close your eyes and imagine lying within that chamber, the stone pressing close around you, the air still and heavy. Above, unseen, the stars are wheeling, their light slipping through hidden channels. You breathe, and the chamber seems to breathe with you, a deep, resonant hush as though stone itself carries a pulse. Perhaps in that moment you feel the boundary shift. The desert horizon fades. The ceiling is no longer stone but sky. The walls dissolve into a vast and endless night. And in that night, the pyramid itself glows faintly. No longer a structure of stone, but a beacon, a lamp for the soul, a flame to guide what cannot be seen. It is said that when the last rites were spoken, the priests whispered words that were never written down, words that belonged only to that night, to that soul, to that passage. Perhaps those words still linger, trapped in the stone, waiting for ears that will never hear them again. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. The pyramid, viewed in daylight, is a monument. It is stone, weight, precision, but by night beneath the stars it transforms. It becomes less solid, more spectral, a stairway of shadows rising into the sky. Its apex points not to earth but to heaven, its base anchored in sand while its summit touches eternity. There is a story, whispered among dreamers, that when one stands before the Great Pyramid under the quiet of midnight, one can feel it hum. Not a sound, not quite a vibration, but a resonance, as though the pyramid is tuned to the same chord as the cosmos itself, as though it is waiting, always waiting, to guide one more soul into the eternal night. And so we return to the desert, where the sands lie silent and the sky is alive with fire. The pyramid stands alone, yet never lonely, for it keeps company with the stars. Its stones are heavy with time, but its spirit is weightless, always leaning upward, always pointing beyond. The gate of eternal night is not closed. It is always open, though we cannot pass through it with our bodies, only with our dreams. To stand before it is to feel that threshold within yourself, the quiet knowing that you too are dust and breath, that one day your name will fade, but your essence may join the stars. and so the vision softens. The pyramid glows softly under the stars, less a tomb than a lantern, less a monument of death than a gate of passage, a place where breath becomes starlight, where silence becomes song, where stone becomes sky. Perhaps it was never meant to be found. Perhaps it was always meant to be felt. And tonight, as the stars drift quietly overhead, the gate of eternal night remains open. Waiting, watching, whispering, in the heart of the desert, where dunes roll like frozen waves and the air trembles with silence, there rises a figure both eternal and patient. The Great Pyramid stands not merely as stone, but as something older than memory, something that feels less built than dreamed. It is said the desert listens, it remembers, it waits, and in this waiting, the pyramid too has taken on the desert's breath, unmoving, enduring, always watching. Through centuries of sandstorms, conquests, pilgrims, and seekers, it has remained, as though it is itself a sleeper who will one day stir. Some believe the pyramid is a monument complete. Others whisper it was never finished, that it was left as a riddle carved in half phrases, its meaning incomplete by design. And so it waits, as a giant waits in slumber, as a star waits to be seen. Step closer, and you can feel the hush that surrounds it. The outer stones, worn smooth by wind and time, hold a quiet pulse. Enter within, and the silence deepens thick as water. The corridors narrow, their walls closing in like the throat of the earth, until at last you stand in chambers carved from darkness itself. These rooms are bare, empty, and yet not hollow. The air is heavy, as though filled with a presence unseen. Each chamber feels like a heartbeat suspended, vast, resonant, but unmoving, as though time itself pauses when one enters. Perhaps this is the truest mystery of the pyramid, not that it was built, but that it still waits. Whispers tell us the builders raised it for kings, that it was a tomb, a vessel for eternity. Yet no golden treasure lies within, no painted walls tell its story, no hieroglyphs mark its meaning. What is left is stone, and silence, and the sense that something unfinished lingers here. Could it be that the emptiness is itself the message? That the pyramid was less a tomb than a temple of waiting? A calendar of stars? A map of the cosmos? Or perhaps it was none of these. Perhaps it was always meant to be silence, a question turned into architecture, a riddle meant not to be solved, but to be felt. It is said the chambers hum, not with sound, but with resonance. A low vibration that seems to echo from the stone itself. Some who have stood there swear they heard a rhythm, a faint, steady beat like the echo of a heart that is not their own. Was it the sound of the earth itself, or the lingering breath of those who once dreamed these walls into being? Imagine wandering through those passages in darkness, a single torch in your hand. The flame flickers against the stone, casting shadows that seem to move of their own accord. Each step echoes back to you, as though the pyramid does not permit you to walk alone. You pause, and the air is so still that your breath becomes a kind of prayer. You feel that you are not merely walking through a monument, but through a body, corridors like veins, chambers like organs, silence like breath held for eternity. A sleeping giant, some might say. Its heart has not yet awakened, and so it waits. Across centuries, the pyramid has waited, through storms that swallowed caravans whole, through armies that carved their names in its stones, through seekers who chipped at its walls in search of treasure, through dreamers who looked upon it and asked what it meant. And still it remains, unmoved, unbroken, waiting for a question that has not yet been spoken. Perhaps the pyramid was not meant for kings at all. Perhaps it was meant for us, for those who come centuries later, searching not for bodies or gold, but for meaning. And when we stand within its chambers, we do not find answers. We find waiting. Waiting can be its own kind of truth. Some voices say the pyramid is a calendar, aligned with the stars, its passages tracing the dance of celestial cycles. Others say it is an initiation chamber, where seekers were tested by darkness and silence, where fear gave way to vision. Still others claim it is an echo of the earth itself, a mirror of mountains, rivers, and sky, a stone map of creation. But perhaps it is none of these things. Perhaps its truest purpose is the waiting itself, a silence carved in stone so vast that it humbles every voice that enters. Beneath the silence, something lingers. Not words, not answers, but a presence. It is like standing in the pause between breaths, the stillness between heartbeats, the hush before a bell is struck. That endless pause, that infinite suspension is the message. And so the pyramid continues to sleep. Each night the stars pass overhead, and its summit points unchanging toward the heavens. Each day the desert sun burns across its face, and still it does not stir. Perhaps it is not meant to awaken. Perhaps its endless waiting is the very thing it was made to hold. Not life, not death, not even memory, but the stillness that exists before all things. In forgotten corners of the earth, there are ruins of temples, shrines, and cities. They crumble, they fade, but the pyramid waits. Its waiting is its immortality. Close your eyes and feel it. The hush of stone, the weight of centuries pressing down, the slow spiral of dust caught in a shaft of light, the echo of your own breath against the walls. You are standing inside a question too vast to answer, and in that question there is peace. The pyramid will still be here tomorrow. It will still be here in 1,000 years. Its silence is not asking for us to solve it. Its silence is the gift, a reminder that some mysteries are not meant to be unveiled, but to be lived alongside, patiently, reverently, endlessly, and so the story fades. The pyramid rests in the desert, its chambers hushed, its stones breathing the weight of time. It has seen empires rise and fall. It has seen the dust of armies swept away. It has seen the night sky change and return, season after season, star after star, and still it waits. Perhaps it was never meant to be finished. Perhaps its silence was always the message itself. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. And when we stand within those walls, when we let the silence press gently against us, we may hear not an answer, but a waiting. The chamber does not end. The pyramid does not wake. The silence does not break, it waits. And waits, and waits. And tonight, as your eyes grow heavy, you too may drift into that endless waiting, into the hush of stone, into the stillness of centuries, into the chamber of silence where questions sleep and dreams begin. In the desert's heart, where the dunes breathe like waves of a timeless sea, a gate of stone rises against the horizon. It is not marked by banners or fire, nor does it bear a name that survives upon the lips of men. It simply stands where, veiled in silence, brushed by the wind, eternal as the sky above it. Some say this gate is not of brick or mortar, but of mystery itself. An opening not to corridors of stone, but to questions that have no answer. A map not drawn in ink or carved in walls, but traced instead in silence. A map that burns softly in the mind, like a parchment set aflame, glowing, dissolving, leaving behind only the smoke of wonder. And from this gate, we are invited to step inward, into the pyramid not of history, not of gold or tombs, but of dream. For every civilization leaves behind mysteries it cannot speak, secrets it chooses not to inscribe, riddles left untouched like seeds hidden in the sand. It is said the greatest of these secrets is not one that can be written or carved or spoken aloud. It is a secret meant to be felt, like the hush of wind against the skin, like starlight resting upon still waters, like the breath between two words. When we step into the pyramid, what do we find? Not scrolls, not tales etched in glyphs, not stories laid bare upon the walls. Instead, we find absence, stillness, the quiet of stone. Here inscriptions fall away. Here the builders left no messages for us to read, no songs for us to recite. The silence is its own script, the void its own voice. It is as though the pyramid itself says, not every truth is for telling. Some truths belong only to silence. Whispers tell us that even in the ancient temples, where every wall was painted with hymns, every ceiling traced with stars, there were always corners left blank, spaces where no hand dared to carve, no scribe dared to write, spaces reserved for that which could not be spoken. And so within this great pyramid we find such a silence magnified, vast halls where the story is not told, caverns where the air itself becomes the only scripture, a veil drawn across the face of truth, leaving us to wonder what lies behind it, and whether we are meant to look at all. Some believe the pyramid itself is a riddle, not one to be solved with reason or measured by rulers of stone, but one to be lived, to be carried within. It is said each angle, each shaft, each stone bears meaning, aligned with stars, balanced with the breath of the earth. Yet when scholars come with their questions, the pyramid yields no clear reply. It offers not answers but echoes, not solutions but silence. Perhaps this is its deepest secret, that meaning is not always meant to be revealed. That the most sacred truths are not those which can be written or spoken, but those which live only in the space between knowing and unknowing. Imagine a priest standing before the rising sun, his hands lifted, his eyes closed. He does not speak the name of the divine, for to speak it would diminish it. He keeps it within in silence and breath. So too with the pyramid. It is a prayer left unspoken, a name that cannot be uttered, a mystery that cannot be told. Some voices tell us the pyramid was never meant as a tomb at all, but as a vessel for silence. A monument to what should not and perhaps cannot be spoken. There are tales of initiates who entered its dark chambers, guided not by light but by quiet. They were told no words, given no instructions, only left to wander the stillness until they discovered the secret for themselves, not in speech, not in thought, but in the hush of their own heartbeat echoing against the stone. Others say the secret is older still, that it is not of kings or priests but of the earth itself, that beneath the silence of stone lies the silence of the world, the breath of the desert, the pulse of the stars, the oceanic hush that binds all things together. And yet, when asked to explain, the desert gives no answer. The wind carries only its own murmur. The stars keep their distance. The pyramid stands and does not speak. For some truths are not meant to be written in words, but in wonder. When one stands before the sarcophagus deep within, the vast granite box that seems built for eternity, one finds it empty. No body rests within, no treasure lies beside it. It is vast, cold, waiting, yet holding nothing. Some see this emptiness as failure, but others know that absence itself can be sacred. Just as silence can be a kind of music, just as darkness allows the stars to be seen, so too can emptiness be its own presence. The chamber is not hollow. It is full of silence, full of waiting, full of the presence of absence. It is said that not every gift is meant to be opened. Some remain wrapped in mystery, their beauty lying not in their unveiling but in the wonder they inspire. The pyramid is such a gift, a sealed box whose secret is not in what it holds but in the fact that it holds anything at all. Perhaps we are not meant to know. Perhaps we are meant only to dream, to drift among the questions as stars drift across the night. The pyramid becomes not a riddle to solve, but a dream to inhabit. A dream of stone and silence. A dream that asks us to rest within its mystery rather than chase it. In forgotten corners of the earth, there are always stories untold. Scrolls lost to fire, names erased by sand. But their silence is not empty. Their silence is fertile, alive with the seeds of imagination. The pyramid, too, gives us silence. And in that silence we dream. We dream of chambers yet undiscovered, of secrets whispered through stone, of truths veiled not to punish us but to invite us to wonder. And so the story returns to the desert wind. It brushes across the stones, carrying with it grains of sand, fragments of centuries, whispers of voices long gone. The pyramid does not stir. It does not reveal. It simply waits, silent as it has always been. Perhaps the greatest secret is this: not every mystery is for knowing. Some are for feeling, some for wondering, some for resting within, like a child resting within the arms of night. The wind moves again, soft and eternal. It carries across the dunes, across the stones, across your own breath as you listen, and in its hush the secret remains, the secret that cannot be spoken, the secret that belongs not to words but to silence itself, the secret that waits endlessly beneath the stars. And as you drift toward sleep, you may feel that silence settling around you too, a veil, a hush, a breath, not asking to be solved, not asking to be known, only asking to be felt. Perhaps it was never meant to be found. Perhaps it was always meant to be dreamed,